Malcolm, my brother. Boy, is there a lot going on. Thankful to have you on Mea Culpa again as we do our every Thursday Substack. I don't want to interfere with your lunch while we're at it. And since we're doing that, I want to start with Trump's latest big brother but dumber idea. And that would be forcing tourists to cough up 5 years of social media posts before they can enter this country. Now, from an intelligence perspective, what's he really trying to accomplish here? And what does it tell you about the authoritarian drift that we're watching in real time?
Well, first off, what does it tell me? Who knows? It just tells me that he wants to be an authoritarian. He wants to control not just who comes into the United States, but what people who come into the United States can think before they get to the border. And you know, Michael, you know what he's looking for. Praise of Trump or criticism of Trump personally. He has absolutely no other interest than anything else.
Well,
he's using it.
I'm not so sure about that one, my brother. So
what do you think?
I have a very different perspective on what it is that he's looking for. First of all, you have to remember the 30 countries that he right now has on the banned list. You're talking about countries like Somalia or Afghanistan and Africa and 30 different countries. I can't even name them off the top of my head. But there are things that those 30 countries have in common. One, it's the predominance of the religion that's there and predominantly the color of the person's skin. It wasn't me who turned around at that shit show the other day when he turned around and said, well, where are the people from Norway? Why aren't they sending people from Norway or Sweden? So let me ask you again, my friend, right? From your intelligence perspective, what do you think he's really trying to accomplish here?
Well, okay, but the reason I mentioned whether you praised or criticized Trump is because he's also including European nations. He's including France. He's including Britain. But you have to understand, from his perspective, he views France and Britain as teetering on the edge of becoming minority people of color countries. He actually put that in his national security memoranda the other day, the national security policy, that countries that were about to lose their cultural identity because of the people who were immigrants to their country. By the way, famous phrase by Vladimir Putin also, that France will become taken over by the brown people from its colonies. So Trump and Putin are on that. And you're right. The 30 countries that he calls the S-hole countries are 100% people of color. Look, Donald Trump, I know you've known him for a very long time, but now he has demonstrated himself. He's a racist. He is an open white supremacist, just on the table. And I don't know if he's ever been to Norway or Sweden, but I have a couple of times. And let me tell you something, if anything's going to happen, you're going to have Americans trying to defect to go over there because, one, the quality of life is very good in those countries. Two, flamingly socialist countries, right? They have a very good welfare system. Norway, of course, is an oil-producing country, so I'm sure he's more interested in that. But he thinks that, having the women who look like the band members of ABBA, right? Agnes Volskog and her friends, black, dark hair Scandinavian Vikings and blonde haired, Aryans, that has always been his norm. I find it funny. I'm amazed that he's not opening the floodgates to Slovenia, Serbia, Montenegro, and all these other places, since his wife is an immigrant from there and his children are anchor babies from the former communist Soviet Union, So all very interesting. But Donald Trump himself, look, the man just hates black people. And he associates people of color as not being able to contribute anything. But what he's really doing is surrendering Africa to China as a market, as a place where they can produce things, minerals, And if it isn't something that he personally can benefit from, like this alleged deal about natural gas in the what do you call it? The Rwandan basin out there. This guy has a colonialist mindset, right? I wouldn't be surprised if he, like that threat he did against Nigeria, I'm going to send the U.S. Army in there. Right. Okay. I've been to Eastern Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. You don't want to go there. It's all jungle. So, and God knows he hates that too, although he's about to get into a jungle war in Venezuela.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think the whole thing is just crazy. Though, if they would have phrased it differently, and I don't know whether or not Stephen Miller, who also is a racist, who's a white supremacist, if they would have framed it differently, by us going back and looking 5 years at people's social media posts, we could see whether they are or are not anti-American. And by the way, who could possibly turn around and say, that's an idea, right? Let's see people who want to come to this country, people who want to live here, who want to apply for citizenship. What are they saying when they're not in America? Why would we want somebody in this country who doesn't love this country, doesn't want to be a part of this country, but rather wants to bring their ideology, their whatever demented ideas, to our country and potentially cause harm? There is a way that he could have said it, but when you start identifying the countries that you have no interest in allowing, and they all have a very similar attribute or attributes, well, I think then you have the right to turn around and to question the authenticity of that move. But Malcolm, let me ask you this, because you've studied autocracy.
You need to stop using that phrase authenticity with Trump, all right?
Yeah, there you go. Well, you've studied autocracy your entire life.
I have.
When a leader, that you have. When a leader starts demanding people's digital histories at the border, isn't that less vetting and more surveillance, state cosplay? And what's the long-term play here?
Well, it's 100% surveillance. And I find it fascinating that he wants their social media because he understands the value of what people say. And what this truly means. He's going to contract social media companies like, who use AI to get a contract to conduct open surveillance of people who choose to visit the United States. This isn't for immigrants. It's for anyone who wants to visit the United States. And his biggest problem is that these companies who have been out there screaming that they have had their freedom to speak suppressed, are actually advocating that the First Amendment of the Constitution, which we have been pushing all around the world, the American values, the values of democracy, the values of freedom, the value of liberty, the value of being a free man who is free to go about and say what he pleases, right? Norman Rockwell's third image of his the four freedoms that Franklin Delano Roosevelt spoke about, right? The man standing up in a referendum and speaking. He doesn't want any of that. He doesn't want any of that. I wrote about this in my 2018 book, The Plot to Destroy Democracy, that when Russia was pushing the American right to become essentially a mimic, a copy of Putin's agenda to turn Russia into this oligarchy, this dictatorial-run oligarchy, I said that America was in danger under Team Trump and his allies of becoming a constitutional autocracy. And that's where the Constitution is a fig leaf. And it's only applied, I'm putting air quotes there, you can't see it, applied to people who are loyal to him. They will get rights. They will get the Constitution. Whereas everyone else, their rights will be taken away from them through enforcement mechanisms. And I suspect that that's exactly what's happening here. He wants if you're a patriot and you're buying Donald Trump Bitcoin, or you're buying the Donald Trump telephone or his wine or his golden tennis shoes, you're a patriot and you deserve the rights of an American citizen. The Constitution, when it was written, there were 30,000 French people in the United States doing trade, living here, settling here. When we had finished the battle at Trenton in the winter of 1776, the miracle of the crossing of the Delaware, we invited all of those prisoners of war, I think it was like 10,000, were invited to remain and settle in the United States. The rights of the Constitution, which was written in 1783, ratified, I believe, 1789, are applied to anyone. What Trump and that Nazi Steve Miller are doing is they want to stop it at the other side of that customs gate. And they want to draw a line. But the problem is, we are now seeing that even if you cross that customs gate legally, they can now take away all of those rights from you. Case in point, we had that group of immigrants and of people about to be naturalized in Boston, and they were there to swear their oath to the United States of America and receive their citizenship documents. And then people were told, "What country are you from? Get out of line," right? One woman was Haitian. They just told her she'd been here 20 years doing the process. Get out of line. They don't even know what their status is. I would not be surprised if they are all arrested by ICE and deported, because this country now operates under the principle of white makes right. And Trump only sees this. Well, that's not true. All right, step back one. White, and if you got money, makes right. And that is more important to him than anything. If you can pay him and his family and give his son $140 million at 19 years old, he will give you a U.S. passport. Or you can take it away too in the future if you're not pleasing him. This is as close to dictatorship as we are. We're careening towards it. But Donald Trump, in carrying out these policies, has made it clear he doesn't want people from Norway. There's not a person from Norway that would remain in this country right now. They wouldn't.
Amazing, right? So meanwhile, a federal judge just recently blocked the administration from deploying the California National Guard into Los Angeles. Malcolm, do me a favor, for my listeners, walk us through what it means when the president of the United States keeps trying to use the military as his personal domestic police force. I mean, how dangerous is that line that he keeps pushing? And if you can, because you're a historian at heart, talk about other figures in history that have done the same.
Yeah. Usually I'm fighting them in recommending to drop 2,000-pound laser guided bombs on those other regimes that we're taking our opinions from. First off and foremost, the president does have powers. Let's concede some things. Let's stipulate some things. The president has the power to call out the National Guard and to take the National Guard from the control of a governor to be used in the state of national emergency. The argument Donald Trump used in this pantomime, because there is no state of national emergency. This is MAGA army infotainment, right? He wanted to see those tough guys on the street, those, with rifles, what he calls those hombres, bad hombres, out there taking on the Latin threat. He thought he was going to get real military activity out there in a large scale. Especially, to tell you the truth, the National Guard could be seen as legitimate until, of course, this ruling. It's when he called the Marines out, took them off rotation for a deployment over to the Middle East, took them out, and then had them standing around coking and smoking in Los Angeles to guard 2 federal buildings. That is where the president truly abused his power. He views this, he has people behind him. And it comes from the crazy QAnon world in MAGA who were saying, we want soldiers out there. We want to see tough action out there. Trump understands more than anything the mindset of the Walmart shopper, right? And he knows that a lot of these guys who are out there wearing Trump hats, driving around pickup trucks with flags and the American flag and the Trump flag at the same time are the same people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Right. He understands their mindset is they love the look of special forces. They love the look of guys with rifles and guns out in the streets. And they really are driving him through representatives and idiots like, again, Stephen Miller, who by all, no way can you say that this man is not a straight up fascist white supremacist who believes that force against American citizens is lawful because the president has the authority to do whatever he wants, according to the Supreme Court. So now that a judge has adjudicated this, that the actual mobilization itself, there was no state of emergency. And there never was. There was no rioting until they caused rioting by putting ICE officers in the street, an organization who, in my estimation, is no different than, a lighter version of Haiti's Tantan Makut or Saddam Hussein's Mukhabarat, right? The secret police. Guys who could come to your house, snatch you up, claim, and then the mothers have sorry, I almost got nasty language. These guys had the nerve to come out and say, we don't need warrants, when the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, which was written because British soldiers were on the streets and breaking into houses and stealing what they wanted and taking out anyone that they wanted, were coming in without warrants. We wrote this in the Constitution. Donald Trump's entire attitude towards the use of these laws, of these court rulings, is going to be simple. He's going to apply the DILIGAF acronym, right? Do I look like I give a flip? He doesn't. I really think he's lawless at this point, and he only maintains the visage of law to benefit his propaganda that he's doing it right. And then he always hits us with that ... Michael, of which you are an example of that ... right? But I have powers in which I can do things if I want to. And, that's just his way of saying, I'm about to do this. And, this is the way that
there's nothing that you could goddamn do about it. Yeah. This is right out of the Stalin playbook. The same thing. They kick the door down. They pull you out. The same thing, by the way, with Putin. He doesn't like who you are. The police show up like Navalny. They take you. They throw you. They create some sort of a fake law, lawsuit against you. They make a crime. You get indicted. You're sitting in that plastic cell in front of the cameras there so that they can basically show the entire country that could be you. It's no different here. But Malcolm,
I find it fascinating, though, that his most recent go-to, he got you on charges for doing the stuff he ordered you to do, right? But his go-to now is so weird, which is mortgage fraud.
Well,
right?
No, because mortgage fraud is extremely easy to prove.
Right.
Extremely easy, as is banking. Well, then they hit you with wire transfer. They hit you with all this because, look, everybody makes a mistake on the form. Even if you don't think it's a mistake, there's a mistake on that form no matter what. And the interesting thing, like, for example, in my HELOC violation, my HELOC forms were produced for me by my fucking banker, all right? By my banker who said, oh, here you go. And so I had an 80% equity in the home. There was not a chance in the world that the bank was going to lose anything on a HELOC. Plus, I had more money in the bank at the time than my mortgage plus the HELOC combined. Nope, doesn't make a difference. You didn't tell us that you were going to use it for purposes of an NDA. And so I don't need to tell you what I'm using a HELOC for. But, you filled out the form wrong. You signed it. It's on you. And they will bleed you out. You cannot fight the government. I don't give a flying fuck whether you're Elon Musk, whether you're Mark Zuckerberg, or whether you're homeless Harry, walking over there and sleeping on the street. Doesn't make a fucking difference. If they want you, it's where the old adage comes from, Malcolm. They can indict a ham sandwich. And I truly believe that Tish James Comey, Adam Schiff, all of these guys that Trump has or is trying to get indictments on, if those cases ended up going forward, and not because of the mistakes, again, that his Department of Losers keep making, which is you cannot just appoint somebody as a U.S. attorney. That person, there is a process, needs to be approved, right? Confirmed either by the Senate or by the judges, the federal judges in that state. Plain and simple. He doesn't like it. He doesn't want to play by the rules. Well, this is a rule that screwed him up in both New Jersey and Virginia. Question is, will he be able to find somebody else to do it? And if he does, there is no fucking doubt in my mind, just like Harvey Silverglate wrote in his book, 5 Felonies a Day, everyone commits 5 felonies a day. And if Uncle Sam wants you, doesn't make a difference if you're God coming down from the heaven above. They're going to get you. It's just the way it works. But Malcolm, let me go back to what we were talking about before with this National Guard. You see a pattern here? Trump testing the limits of federal power, courts pushing back, and then him doubling down anyway. What do you think's the next move in that script?
I got to tell you something. I'm rather surprised because I think that the pushback that he got on the Marines and then saw that he couldn't get the images that he wanted. I really think that most of this is really MAGA infotainment, including the boat attacks down in Venezuela. This is just for them to go, we're doing stuff. The real enforcement that he thinks he has, and I think that this is another thing that dictators often do. They think that they actually have more force, authority and force than they do. This is not yet a totalitarian country. Okay, he wants that. They're dreaming about it. Stephen Miller wakes up and talks every day as if America is Moscow, right? He really talks like that.
Only on Fox News.
Yes, of course. But he talks like that to Trump. You and I both know that, right? He says that to Trump, and Trump believes that he has this.
You ever tried launching a podcast with zero experience? Well, let me tell you, it's like being tossed into a cage match with a grizzly bear, blindfolded, wearing clown shoes. I mean, when I started Mea Culpa, I thought to myself, come on, how hard can this be? Well, script writing, logos, production schedules, ad deals, and don't even get me started on the tech setup. I mean, I felt like I was decoding the damn Matrix. If only I had Shopify when I launched this beast. Shopify is the platform behind millions of businesses across the globe, responsible for a whopping 10%, you hear me? 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. And my friends, that's not hype. That's a fact. From big names like Mattel and Gymshark to folks just getting their hustle off the ground, Shopify's got their back. I mean, you want a gorgeous online store? Shopify's got hundreds of sleek, ready-to-go templates that make you look like a design god. And AI tools? Yeah, they've got those too. Writing your product descriptions, jazzing up your images, maybe even making you sound smarter than you actually are. I mean, not naming names or anything, right? I mean, need a marketing squad? Shopify's built-in tools let you hit email, Instagram, TikTok, wherever your customers are scrolling or doom scrolling. And listen, Shopify handles it all. Inventory, returns, international shipping. I mean, they are the ride or die business partner that you never knew that you needed. So if you got a big idea or even a little one and you're ready to turn that dream into a reality, head over to shopify.com/Cohen. So if you want to see less carts being abandoned, it's time for you to head over to Shopify and sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Cohen. That's Shopify, SHOPIFY.com/Cohen. One more time, that's shopify.com/Cohen.
I think Trump really believes that ICE is out there by the hundreds of thousands. You know, this is a force that's less than 10,000. They can't seem to recruit anybody. Did you see that they were swearing in guys with badges who had felonies and sentencing pending, and they didn't even do a basic, ATAC search, for the guy's name. One guy was going to prison, and they were arming him. And so this force, I think Trump has been led to believe that they are his military force on the streets. And I think that, like Hitler watching people, dancing at the end of piano wire, I think Trump probably gets an end of day video feed of all of these ICE takedowns going along the country, and that he enjoys them. Right? Because it's the image. It's it's like The Apprentice, only with cool guys in tactical gear doing cool stuff, and MAGA loves it.
Doing chin-ups and pull-ups at Reagan National Airport.
Christ.
You see, Malcolm, you're just upset because you can't do pull-ups.
Not like Grandpa. No, and I don't eat dead bears off the road either, right? But geez Louise, the whole point here is this is MAGA-tainment. And it has nothing to do with you or me, but your arrest or your rearrest or my arrest, like you said, 5 felonies a day, I got to tell you an interesting anecdote here. My dad joined the Navy at 15 in World War II, right? 1944, was 6 foot tall. They put him in, didn't know that he was a kid, right? But one of the things that he taught me in the Navy was, he goes, hey, listen, if you're going to do something while you're in the service, do this. Never violate the letter of the law. Never. He goes, the Uniform Code of Military Justice is written in blood, and they are watching you. And anytime that you get punished, they're going to ask you one question. Did you do or did you not do X in violation of the UCMJ? And if you say yes, but, you're done. There's nothing else. And I think that Trump and his DOJ, in going after their enemies, as you say, right? You sign a form, you're you're a senior attorney general of the United States, and you're filling out a routine form, and the date is off, or you erased it. That's literally perjury, what you're essentially saying, right? Literally.
I am saying it.
And all you got to do is all you got to do is do it. Right? Even if it was innocent. The spirit of the law, I was taught in the military, means nothing. It's the letter of the law. And Trump is aware of that. But also, he's also aware that he can do any damn thing he wants because no one's going to come after him.
Exactly. And he is wildly aware that these forms are impossible to get right. You can always find an error in these forms. And at the bottom of the forms, it says, I hereby declare under the perjury of law, right, punishable by the fullest extent of the law, that all the aforementioned information is true and accurate. All right, plain and simple. And so what did they do? They turn around, just answer me this one question. Look at line number 10, Tish James. Is that your primary residence or is that a secondary residence? And remember, you're under oath. Well, where is your primary residence? Well, that's not it. Okay, so that line is wrong, correct? Correct. Okay.
Done.
Therefore, you're finished. Plain and simple. And they can do the same to Comey. They can do the same to Adam Schiff. They can do that. They can play that game with anyone.
Yeah, but
instead of allowing you, see, the way the law is supposed to work, in all fairness, is they're not supposed to prosecute you when you're talking about one of these, what they call a ticky-tack sort of a mistake, a violation. Well, I don't know. I had 9 of them, so I certainly get it, right? They can do whatever they want. If they want to turn around and say, is that a violation of law? Well, yeah, I guess, under the strict letter of the law, it just is what it is. And that's the thing. But Malcolm, let me ask you this quick question here.
Yeah.
Because I want to switch over to one of our favorite topics, of course, that's the Epstein file. Because right now, a judge ordered the release of the Epstein grand jury records, which date back to 2019, right? Almost 7 years ago now. With your counterintelligence lens, what should the American public expect to learn? And what do you think that Trump world fears about being unearthed here? If anything.
You know what? I often talk to people about the intelligence processes. And even though this is a matter of legality, when you're sorting through any tranche of documents or any tranche of data, you as a lawyer will appreciate this. The grand jury documents are not going to tell us in many instances direct things. Okay. But we have this saying in the intelligence community. We don't look for the dots of light. We see that. That's evidence, right? That's material we can work with. What we look for is, where is there a black hole in the middle of all of that evidence, right? Black holes have strength, they have power, and they are strong enough to bend and draw light in to the point that it disappears at the event horizon. You cannot see beyond it. But you know it's there because all of the indications are of neurons and everything flowing to it are flowing to a place we don't see something. And I suspect that in a few places, we're going to see that leads to, one, the actual individuals who sexually purchase children. And two, it's going to fill out the relationship that Donald Trump had, over time out of New York, right? Not so much Mar-a-Lago, but in New York. And it's going to cross-reference a lot of data people didn't have before. I don't know, right? Just as you wouldn't know, you're a lawyer, that it's going to say Donald Trump was person X and he had 27 massages. It's never going to be like that.
That's not what the grand jury was even about. Because just so I want our listeners, so that we don't waste a whole ton of time, because the hour goes by way too quick here. That's not how grand juries work. The grand jury was to indict, to get an indictment. It's only a one-sided event where the prosecution speaks to the jurors. The goal is to indict the individual, not any of the people who may be somehow contemporaneously involved. It is for Jeffrey Epstein. It was for the indictment, Ghislaine Maxwell. They're not going to be saying, was Donald Trump involved? Was Leon Black involved? Was Alan Dershowitz involved? Was all the names that are in his book? Some of them may, some may not. Don't know. But that's not what the grand jury is all about. The grand jury is not to bring in those people. It's to talk about his actions so that you could build your case simply to get the indictment. And remember, the indictment is now just the beginning of the process. Right. It is not the end. It's not the trial. It's merely just being permitted to file the action and to have the cause of action identified.
Sure. I still think it has enough gravity to identify black holes, though. I mean, it's still data that we didn't have. And I don't even want to say it's drip, drip, drip. It's waterfall, waterfall, waterfall. It's just a question of what's coming next. But
I know that in about 7 days from now, Malcolm, we're supposed to be receiving the entire file, right? I mean, that's according to even his own words. When he signed the document, permitting the release, that was after both the House and the Senate approved it. We're supposed to see it. So I'm with you, brother, that this is a drip, drip, drip. I'd like to read the grand jury, but I don't think shit is going to come out of that. But I do want to ask you, since we're talking about so many things that make no sense, why does Trump, right? Why does Trump keep leaning so hard into fantasies about Venezuelan drug gangs instead of addressing real, documented national security threats? Who do you think benefits from this kind of misinformation?
Well, I mean, Trump is intending to benefit, as we've learned from the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times on the Ukraine negotiations and Gaza. Everything is about a real estate deal. It has nothing to do with Ukraine's sovereignty. It has nothing to do with anything other than gaining access. I remember you and I spoke about this on our weekly discussion, that I thought it was as much as $500 billion of sanctioned Russian money that they would gain access to. We're finding out from the Wall Street Journal, it's $2 trillion of money that is held up in Russia that the Trump team, Witkoff, everyone from Elon Musk to everyone else, Russia would be this giant third world gap that they would be rushing in there to gain access to all of that illicit oligarch money. So they have to sell Ukraine down the river to gain that money. The same reason why Trump put out this new national security strategy, which is laughable. Our usual national security strategies are in the hundreds of pages, outlining in great detail in which way we're going to assist our allies and which way we're going to deploy our forces. This one was essentially what I wrote in my 2018 book, essentially what Putin's philosopher, Alexander Dugin, said a decade ago. America should have the Americas, Russia will take Europe, China will have Asia, making the world a tripolar world and cutting the tie between the United States and Europe, getting rid of everything that's happened since D-Day in 1944, forgetting it. Well, now that they've done that, we have an America which is now poised to completely and officially align with Moscow. And it's all about getting private money. It is about nothing other than getting money for Trump and his family.
That's crazy, because China,
it sounds crazy, but it is.
Well, China is a dictatorship,
yes,
as is Russia. But the United States isn't. So how could you have that sort of tripolar, division when you have two of the three of the land masses and the population controlled by dictators?
Mm-hmm. He loves that idea. And he loves the idea that America, when he did his comment last week about, we are reestablishing the Monroe Doctrine. Monroe Doctrine went away with the liberation and the independence of all the South American states. They have something to say about it. But Trump wants to be Xi. Trump wants to be Putin. Trump wants to be Kim Jong-un. He and he's, not to mention, he's got suffering, from, slowing down through to, quite possibly medical issues. But he wants to be a strong man. This is a man who once, had Donald J. Trump engraved over Institutes of Peace. We said this a couple of years ago. I think I wrote a Substack on it. He is an African, the whitest African dictator there's been, right? He is the white Idi Amin. And the only thing that he hasn't done is wear a sash, right? But he's already started awarding himself awards, naming things after him. He's trying to build a freaking Arc de Triomphe, the Arc de Trump, in front of Arlington National Cemetery to celebrate him. So what we all see here as common sense craziness of a man that is deranged within his bubble, which is
Malcolm,
MAGA.
I don't think you're being fair here, to be honest with you. I don't think you're being
fair.
Better
tell me.
All right. Oh, yeah.
I need more hot chocolate.
I mean, so he put his name on the Institute of the building for the Institute of Peace. It is now known as the Donald J. Trump institute of peace. How could you say that that's not the right thing when he has already settled 8 wars? No other president has done. Where are you going? I mean, 8 wars, possibly 9, possibly 9. It may even be 10, depending upon how you look at it. The way I look at it, it's 10, right?
Oh.
Anybody who could settle 10 wars in 10 months is better than the 90 deals in 90 days. Certainly deserves their name on the side of a building.
You know what's really funny?
Me?
Case in point, the
Me?
first building. No, not you. You're not that funny. The first building. You're funny ho ho, not funny ha ha. The first building Doge emptied was that building, and it arguably did not belong to the United States. It was a nonprofit. They just got rid of it. This has been in someone's head for a very long time, right? Let's give this thing. But, all jokes aside, because we are now entering a very dangerous period, there have been some movements of U.S. military forces that show that war in Venezuela is imminent. And it's the purpose of that war. We just sent a jammer bombing squadron that knocks down all of the radars in that country where they launch missiles. They're from Whidbey Island, Washington State. They only deploy in advance of real wars like the attack on Iran. Well, they're in Puerto Rico this week. All of their aircraft, all of their maintenance crews have suddenly showed up down there. We're looking at submarines that are carrying cruise missiles and things like that against a country where the average person makes $1 a day and wears flip-flops. And as you know, we don't do well against people with flip-flops. But another component of this, including the boat strikes, is MAGA-tainment, right? It's infotainment for MAGA. But that country has the world's single largest reserve of oil. Ain't the greatest oil either, right? It's not like the light sweet crude that we produce in the United States. But he doesn't care. This is a game of risk to him. And he is taking multicolored places on a map. And he's the kid that cheats. He rolls a 2 and then he flips it over and goes, oh, it's a 12. And he launches military forces. If we're not at war by Christmas, and I think he'll call it the Christmas war, that I will be very surprised because the real weapons are starting to move now. And one thing that I learned long ago, we don't move weapons and ammunition to send the ammunition back.
Yeah, that is for sure. Hey, Malcolm, let me ask you a question because we've talked about this before. During these multitude of interviews, and honestly, if I was still in the game, I would prohibit him, for example, of doing as many of these conversations, these meet and greets, whatever you want to call them, when he either meanders to the back of the Air Force One aircraft or he starts taking questions in the Oval, or when he decides to walk out to go to Marine One, to take him to Air Force One to go play golf, which is basically every weekend. He engages in conversation with the media. And he doesn't like it, clearly, because they ask him real questions that are predicated on fact. Trump is now insisting that he is beloved by Black Americans. I couldn't believe it when I heard him say it. Now, you and I both know that the data certainly does not support that. Mm-hmm. So the question I want to ask you is, why is he so desperate for that narrative? And what does it reveal about the coalition that he thinks he needs to stay in power?
Well, I mean, it was that, I believe that group of psychologists from Massachusetts that did that wrote a book saying that this man is the extreme version of malignant narcissism. But a component of malignant narcissism is narcissism, right? He has to be seen, even amongst his enemies, that all news is good news, no matter whether it's good, whether it's bad. He loves the combat with them. He loves combat with the news media because he's ready to sit there. The only person he really hasn't, that we've seen him flex over, was Mamdani. And you can almost be sure that's a play. that he likes guys who are powerful who can get in there. But at some point, he's going to go like, "Oh yeah, we're going to shut off $50 billion to New York City,"
Probably.
and because he likes that whole co-opting you on his terms, as you know better than anybody. And also eventually thinking, oh, the money's going to get the Mamdani and he's going to be another Eric Adams, right? And he'll
Mm-hmm.
come to me because I'm going to find something in his past and I'm going to threaten to ship him back to Peshawar, Pakistan, or wherever his family is from. And then he'll grovel to me and I'll have a Marco Rubio.
Right.
This guy is utterly amazing and shameless because he is mentally ill. This malignant narcissism, Mary Trump herself said, his niece, who has her doctorate in psychology, when he gets to the point where something really hurts him, right? There's some, like the polls drop to 30% or something, and somebody really brings him something he cannot deny, he will lash out. He will suffer narcissistic injury. And look, I said this when he was first running. You better pray it's not a fucking atomic bomb, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, you told me and Lev Parnas told me he's not that, right? He lets other people do the hurting, but he doesn't have to put his finger on a trigger to do something. He can, create a policy to where, like they do in Venezuela, they're killing people. And all he's sitting there, someone has convinced him, killing good, right? Where he said, we'll just kill them. We'll just kill them. Law be damned.
Look, I've been around the block with premium clothing that promises a lot and delivers stiff fabric and regret. But the guys at True Classic, they actually get it. Their mission is simple. Bring premium, comfortable clothing to everyone without the designer price tag. And judging by the fact that over 25 million shirts have been sold to 5 million customers with more than 200,000 five-star reviews, well, people agree. And here's the thing. It's not just about the fabric or the fit. It's about confidence. You put on one of these shirts and suddenly you look like you tried, even if your morning consisted of coffee spills and answering emails in your pajamas. And that's why True Classic makes the perfect holiday gift. For your dad, brother, partner, heck, even the kids and women now. There's something for everyone. I've been wearing True Classic for a while, and you could actually feel the difference immediately. It's tailored where you want it, relaxed where you need it. There's no bunching, no stiff fabric, no nonsense. It's just clean, effortless style that actually works in real life. So skip the overpriced designer gamble this year and give comfort, give confidence, give True Classic. And you could grab yours at Amazon, Target, Costco, Sam's Club, or head straight to trueclassic.com/Cohen to lock in the perfect gift. And yes, that's where you get the hookup. Again, it's True Classic, trueclassic.com/Cohen. So upgrade your wardrobe, save money, and finally, feel good in your own clothes. And trust me, your closet's going to thank you.
The Supreme Court the Supreme Court Justice John Roberts just told this man, that they had a conversation saying essentially, you are a king now. There's nothing you can't do. And we will back you at every turn. This will turn out to be one of the most horrifically dangerous periods in American history. And that we're going to find out something like he wanted to nuke Portland, Oregon, right? Just start all over. Some crazy idea a few years after his death. And we'll find out that we were in the movie 7 Days in May, right? That he was going to do a full-scale coup d'etat, kill arrest, and he was going to go full QAnon and hang Democrats off of light posts or something.
Probably.
And the thing is, as we talk, none of this seems far-fetched.
It's crazy, right? Well, let me ask you this question, because Congress is now preparing to end Congress, or whoever, the puppets that are sitting there on the Republican side. They're now preparing to end the investigation into that second follow-up strike, the double dip on that vessel in the Caribbean. Malcolm, my question to you is this about closing the books, or do you think it's about burying them? And what questions still haven't been answered that need to be asked?
Look, I got to tell you, I was so surprised. Their point man for this was Tom Cotton. And, this guy was in the Army. He was a Ranger at one point, or went to Ranger school. And his whole attitude was they literally were describing and changing the terms of what drugs were. And that drugs are not a recreational, addictive narcotic, class 1 narcotic, in which American citizens create the demand and pay enormous amounts of money to get those drugs bought up from Latin America. They've changed that. They've changed the term to where a drug in its refined form, whether it's or unrefined, right? In its refined form, it comes out as powdered cocaine or cocaine paste, is considered now a weapon system, which has been launched by a terrorist enemy equivalent to a hijacked airliner. That's how Tom Cotton and Lindsey Graham, who, look, I don't know what they got on Lindsey Graham. All right. But whatever it is damn good. That man was a lawyer in the Air Force for almost 2 decades and has thrown out literally U.S. Code Section 3.2.1, which is about unlawful orders and killing people. And the first example they use is killing mariners who have been shipwrecked in the water.
Yeah, that's 18-3.2.1.
2.1. Yep.
Exactly.
US Code
Malcolm,
18.
let me ask you this question, because it almost sounds like if you're listening to this podcast and you're listening to me and Malcolm talk, everything seems doom and gloom and so on. And as I write many times in my Substack where I talk about, I don't see it this way so much anymore. Like, I truly believe that Republicans have every intention of doing whatever they can to keep the House, and believe that they're going to keep the Senate. We saw that with the gerrymandering in Texas. We saw the courts now allowing that gerrymander, even though that it's racist in its ideology, in its creation. Right. But it forgets one incredibly important aspect that you cannot control, and that's people suffering. That's people no longer wanting to deal with the bullshit, right? Because that's what it is. We are seeing, as far as I'm concerned, a huge political shift. We saw it in New Jersey. We saw it in New York. We saw it in, Minnesota. We just saw it in Miami, where Eileen Higgins is now the first member of the Democratic Party in 30 years, 3 decades, to now take the mayor's office. This is, to me, a massive flip. Yeah, okay, there was one state, I forget which state that it was, that ended up going. That was the one that, what's her name? She is an interesting name. Bear is the last name.
Bine. Bine in Tennessee.
Bine.
But she moved the needle 13 points.
Okay. She lost. Let's stop. I don't care if she moved it 13 or 20. If you lose even by 1 vote, you're a fucking loser. In the case, the person that's going to be there representing that district is not from the Democratic Party. But that's the only one so far. And we also know, as you were pointing out, it is a massive ruby red district. Ruby red folks also understand when you can't send your kid to school with food, or the kid comes home and there's no dinner on the table because the cupboards are empty or whatnot. We just saw in Miami a Democrat take the mayor's office. That's not anything small. What do you think? What do you think that a flip like that signals about the mood on the ground in parts of the country that the GOP, that this whole gerrymandering bullshit assumes that by doing what they're doing, that they will have this locked down?
You know, the first speech I gave in Miami, I gave at this bookstore. And in the middle of my speech, a pro Trump Cuban lady jumped up, Trump, 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 started shouting at me. And that, I got the full effect of the Republican, conservative, Cuban community down there. They actually protested me. But I saw also a CNN poll that said at the beginning of his term, Trump was -2 with Latinos. And now he's minus 36.
Yeah.
36 points underwater with Latinos. That's the 36% of Latinos that voted for him. I was shocked. He put out this projection, strongman projection. I'm going to take care of everybody. I'm only going after the bad hombres. And not understanding they, by their mere existence as Latinos, and getting the Supreme Court to say racially profiling Latinos was legal in America. Last time that was done was 1941 with Japanese Americans. So, these people are not stupid. They are voters. And they also understand that, like you said, when he killed all the money for school lunches and said, well, a parent can pack a lunch, parents are busy. They, to pack lunches every day for hungry, growing kids when they've had years of where their kids were getting good lunches, relatively good food there, or the option to buy it is an economic burden. The diehard MAGAs are going to be 30%. You will never, ever, ever sway them. Ever.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure I agree with that, because
What?
when their kid comes home in pain because he has no food in his stomach and there's no food in the cupboard and their benefits, remember, as many Republicans as there are Democrats also are recipients of SNAP. And so this nonsense that this only affects Democrats, it is I'm with you more, but I like to just say even so that I don't seem biased here. All right. Mm-hmm. It's a fact. All right. And more red states take money from government than blue states. It's just a fact. But Malcolm, the hour goes by quick. I have one final question for you here. It's an important one because, Malcolm, if you could leave my listeners with one warning and one path forward about the Trump era that we are currently living through, what would you say that we need to understand before it's too late?
Well, you were just talking a moment ago about how it's all doom and gloom when we talk, because we are professional doom and gloomers. But I'm literally have a Substack sitting in front of me right now where I've made this call on your show where I said, it is time we start putting down our agenda to restore America. I call it the American reckoning, because there needs to be a reckoning where we sit down and go, all of this was bad and we need to recalibrate it and get it back. But I actually quote somebody who had it really bad at a bad time. It was the writer Thomas Paine, who wrote the famous pamphlet Common Sense. But his best known pamphlet after Common Sense was when he was a staff officer at Valley Forge and he was freezing and starving in the winter of 1776 at Valley Forge. And he wrote in his next pamphlet, The American Crisis, number one, these are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. We are going to overcome this. You can see it. And it's, when you cancel all of the coal, dust, hospitalization, and medical funds for people that voted for you because you were going to restart coal mines, they're going to be gone. Some of them will all be, I'm MAGA forever, like MAGA ride and die for life. There are more of us than there are them. And it is those people who are the sunshine patriots, right? Who they have their lives. They don't know what's going on. Most people in the American Revolution did not take a side. Did you know that?
Yeah,
They wanted to get paid by the British in a stable currency. They didn't want to pay in script or barter. So we have an opportunity to have an American reckoning. And when I say reckoning, I mean we need to come back in 2027 and 2029, and we need to not just eliminate the presidential pardons. Everything, all the guardrails that failed must be codified now with real punishments. If you do a merger that's antitrust, that violated 50 years of antitrust laws, we should seize them and break them up. And then make their
like
fines.
What we did years ago.
Make their fines not $1 million, 20, 30, 30% of their overall value, right?
Yeah.
We should get rid of, investigate everyone. So there is a future out there in which, in one of the words you said, and I'm really glad you said that because it touched me, suffering.
Yeah.
That no American, I didn't spend my life in the third world getting shot at by terrorists so that American children could suffer and that Americans could feel bad and be poor. We should be Norway. Norway shares its oil wealth, not us, right? And by the way, I sometimes accidentally pay $5 a bottle for water that's shipped from Norway in a glacier that's pristine. And I would like that to be paying that much for water out of California. We have got to love America again. As Americans, all of us, not a small portion of us, but we have to recalibrate that small portion that's ready to go to guns. But we need to be the winter soldiers, not the sunshine patriots.
I'm with you on that. Malcolm Nance, thank you as always for making us all a little bit smarter. Appreciate you, my friend.
It's really my pleasure, Mike.
See you later.
All right.